Hey all, Jean Moncrief here. Welcome to today's Facebook Live. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome on YouTube. So today we're tackling the question of how do I go from being an owner operator of a business to a CEO? And that question comes in different forms. So how do I go from being a one-man show to owning a company with a team capable of running the business without me? How do I transition from an adolescent, sort of troublesome business to a more mature business? So there's the question kind of comes up in different ways or is asked differently. So this week I want to tackle that. Now, if you don't know who I am, Jean Moncrief, I help business owners to create more valuable businesses so that you have a life where you have a business instead of a job, and that business can run without you. And ultimately, when it comes time to exit, whatever the circumstances are, that business is worth something. So going back to the question today, how do I go from owner operator to CEO? How do I go from one-man show to actually having a team that can do a lot of the work for me? Well, of the hundreds of business owners that I speak to and have spoken to over the years, and that I talk to daily, one of the things that keeps coming up, or that I notice, is that there are very few that actually have a plan. There are only a handful that I've met who've kind of got this plan written down on paper. So when you start asking that question about how do I go from owner operator to a business that can run out without me, how do I make sure I've got the right team, how do I employ those people, you've got to have this plan and you've got to have it written down. So many businesses will run strategic planning sessions at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year, or when all hell breaks loose, let's get into a room and let's come up with a strategic planning thing, and we need to hire a few more people and do more, bit of this and bit of that. But without actually having that plan, you're kind of all over the place. And most of the time you have the strategic planning session, but there's not a hell of a lot that comes out of that session. There's not a written plan that comes out. And when there is, it's very often not executed against. So if you go through that strategy planning session and you decide where your business is going over the next 12 months and you're breaking it down to quarters and months and you're kind of mapping it all out, all of a sudden you get your head into the business and into the weeds, and you've forgotten to step away and sort of stand up and just check where you are. Are you still moving toward in accordance with that plan? And that's why, like, the most important part, or the biggest answer to this question, the best answer to this question, like how do I go from troublesome adolescent business to mature business? How do I go from one-man show to having a team that can run the business without me? Is to actually having a plan that's written down, and then sharing that plan with your team. So that's the reason that most businesses just don't make that transition. They don't go from where they are now and their tires just keep spinning to where they really want to be. And to make that transition from adolescent company, you have to envision, you have to plan, and you have to articulate what you see in the future for both yourself, so that you actually know what you're doing, and for your team and your employees. And this speaks to some of the most fundamental questions about how to grow, how to hire, and how to build value in your business. It's having that vision and that plan and building against that vision and the plan. So now I try to avoid big brands, but let's talk about some of the best examples of mature companies who've had to go through all the phases of entrepreneurship to get there. And when those come to mind, you think like McDonald's, you think of Apple, you think of Coca-Cola, Microsoft, IBM. They all went through the phases of going through startup, growth, adolescent, hiring teams, getting people on board, and kind of going from owner-operated to, or one or two-man businesses, to businesses that could actually run without them and could succeed. And the one thing about those businesses is that they actually started with this mature mindset already. So it makes me think of the movie The Founder. The story of the 52-year-old milkshake inventor and salesman, Ray Kroc, who's out there and sees this opportunity. And I love the scene where they're out on the basketball court and they've kind of mapped out the whole restaurant. And they're working through the process, like how everything moves through the restaurant, how each thing goes through the restaurant to make the perfect hamburger. And they manage to kind of accomplish that flow. And then they hire a whole lot of pimply-faced teenagers to do that and to get these really good hamburgers out the door. I know parents who can't get their kids to clean their rooms, let alone get hamburgers out the door. Believe me, I know. I've got my own kid who went off and worked for Itsu in London, did a brilliant job of getting sushi out the front door and keeping the toilets clean and everything. But getting her to clean her bedroom is a whole different story. So where I'm getting is that those businesses that are now mature started out with that kind of mentality, even though they were very small back then. They had this very mature mindset. They knew where they wanted to go. Ray Kroc could see what his company looked like in the future. Thomas Watson could see what IBM looked like down the line. And there's a great interview with Kroc that the interviewer asks him, how do you build a restaurant business and become an overnight success at the age of 52? And Kroc says, well, I was an overnight success, but 30 years is a long, long night. So we very often look at these businesses that are well established and mature and think that they're sort of overnight successes, but there's this massive amount of work that goes in to get you to that level. So if you're just joining now, we're talking about how you go from owner-operated to a successful business that can thrive without, or that has a team in place and can thrive without you as the owner, how to go from a scrappy, unruly adolescent business to a more mature business, how to go from an owner-operated to a CEO. And we're just looking at Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Apple, and the story of Ray Kroc. If you haven't seen The Founder on Netflix, well worth the watch, particularly for folks in restaurant businesses and businesses like that and what Kroc had to go through. A mature company is started differently than all the rest. It's founded on the principle of building a business that works not because of you, the owner, but without you. And I just want that to sink in and to say it again. A mature company, or a company that gets to be mature, is different from everybody else in that it's founded on the principle of building a business that works not because of you, the owner, but without you. And founders of businesses that make it to maturity have a very clear picture of what that business is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, 30 years from now. When asked as well, Thomas Watson, the founder of IBM, in one of the interviews, he basically sort of said something along the lines of, I had this very clear picture of what my company would look like when it was finally done. And he then went out every single day. He kind of fashioned a template, and he went out every single day, built against that template, and checked against that template. Is my company growing the way that I want it to grow? And I think that's where I was getting to at the beginning. You have to have this clear vision of where you want to go, what your business looks like, who you're going to employ, what that team looks like, what your revenue looks like, where you're going. So that big point is, without a written vision, without a plan, you're going to be forever struggling. So you shouldn't be asking questions like, how do I go from owner-operated to sort of being the CEO of the business? Or how do I find the right people for my business? Or how do I go from one-man sort of business to having a whole team? Kind of questions you should be asking are, where do I want to be? When do I want to get there? How many people do I have in this thing? How much capital do I require? What kind of training will it require? What technology are we going to use? You imagine the technology that went into shaping McDonald's. Where will the business be located? And there's some great tools for doing these things, systems like EOS, and I'll add that into the notes later. But putting that whole plan together, and when you and in putting that plan together, you come to grips with these kind of questions like, how do I build a team? How do I go from here to there? And it's something I dedicate a lot of time to, an entire module to, in my business exit formula training. And I spent a significant amount of time working with private clients on, is just kind of getting these questions clear in the mind of where they want to go and what they want to do. And sure, your assumptions might be wrong. No plan is perfect. You'll make some mistakes along the way, but that's fine. As long as you've got that North Star to guide you, you're going to be flying blind sometimes. And it kind of it feels like you're flying by the seat of your pants. But if you know where you're going and you know what your plan is, even when things like COVID hit, you've probably hired and found the right people to kind of rally to your cause and move through very difficult times like we're in at the moment. So to give you like a much more down-to-earth example, I'm going to talk about a little bit about my own business. In the coming decade, there's going to be 50 million baby boomers who are going to retire. 12% of those people own businesses. Now, most of us spend our whole lives building a business. We put our blood, sweat, and tears into it. But the kicker is that only 20% of those businesses that go to market actually sell. And you already don't know when your business is going to need to sell or when you're going to need to exit. Some kind of thing will happen and you're going to need to sell. And you've got to ask yourself, is your business valuable? Is it something you can exit? And for most entrepreneurs, the business is the biggest asset. They put decades of blood, sweat, and tears and relationships into building this asset. Yet at the end of the day, most of us end up with something that's worthless. So my big plan, my big, hairy, audacious goal, is to be the McDonald's of value creation consultancy, to help 1 million business owners, and that's million owner-operated businesses, go from holding worthless businesses or businesses that are not valuable to being elite members of that 20% who can sell, to being true entrepreneurs. And I do that through these Facebook Lives, through my podcast, through my writing, my courses, my private client groups. I do it every day and I absolutely love doing it. And my clients want to own valuable businesses that can thrive without them. And then come time to exit, they can actually sell them for a significant premium. So I have a 10-year plan to do this. And it's been running for a little bit already, so not quite 10 years left, but 10-year plan to do it. And I work backward from that vision, and I've got a 3-year plan, a 12-month plan, down to every single month and quarter. And along the way, I'll need to hire folks, and I know when I need to bring those folks on. And I know the product that I'm building and what I'm trying to create and how I differentiate myself from everybody else out there. And how to best recruit to my cause. So I go through the same planning process and I use the entrepreneurial operating system or EOS to do that. And I work to that plan every day to get where I want to go. So in summarizing, if you're struggling with questions like, how do I go from owner-operated to business that can run and thrive by itself? How do I go from one-man show to having a team? How do I go from a adolescent business to a more mature business? It all starts with a plan. That's number one, a vision, a plan. And unless you have that in place, your wheels are going to be sort of constantly be spinning. So thanks very much for watching today. Any questions, put them into the comments below. I'd be glad to answer them. And hey, if you enjoyed this, then please follow, subscribe, share with your friends. And if you need some help, then go to letsgrowyourbusinessvalue.com. Letsgrowyourbusinessvalue.com. Thanks very much.